Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Will Scharf, the president's attorney, will be here, President Trump's, that is, at 4:30. At 5 o'clock, Congressman Scott Perry joins us with his concern that Joe Biden still has access to the nuclear codes. And Ed Morrissey from Hot Air will be with us at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. Coming up, I want to get into the fact that the media are only now admitting what we've all seen for so long, that Biden's not with it. Biden's gone. Whatever's left of him doesn't involve his brain. It's we've known this for a long time. The press is now finally coming around to saying it because they'd like to eject him and replace the guy so that they can keep Democrats in power. You got to stop Orange Man. Although earlier this week they tried to replace Orange Man. You saw the makeup they put on Joe Biden? Oh, it was unbelievable. They caked that guy in tanner and were like, okay, now he looks alive. Sure he does. So that's coming up. I got to cover the media's explanation for itself. How do you explain yourself? But before we get there, Wally's calling in from Adamstown, Maryland, now on line 3. Wally, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, Vince, I think we ought to mention what a brilliant move it was for Trump to take up Biden on his challenge for the debate. A lot of people were telling Trump he shouldn't have done it because everything was going to work against him. But, none of this would have happened if he hadn't taken him up.
Wally, we had a ton of phone calls to that effect, too. It wasn't just people telling Trump. It was people telling us here on the radio station. They were calling in and saying, I think this is a bad idea. Trump's walking into a trap. And sure enough, Wally, it very much went Trump's way, didn't it?
Right. One other thing, if I can, if they're still challenging Trump to a debate in September, he should accept it under one condition, that there'll be a drug test. And the reason he should give them is because he's concerned about the possibility of Biden being a victim of elder abuse.
Yeah, he's looking out for the guy. I like this idea, Wally. Demonstrate some empathy. Yep. But have you noticed, Wally, how strategically silent President Trump and his campaign have been during this entire saga?
Yes, I have noticed that. I think he's probably doing the right thing there too. But,
it's fascinating. It's the same thing he did on that debate stage. He looked over at Joe. He kind of let the immolation continue. He said that dumpster fire is going to go on over there. I'll just stand here and watch it. And the American people watched along with him. And now he's doing it again this week. President Trump maintaining, as I pointed out, strategic silence here as the Democrats are sharpening their knives for Joe Biden, Wally.
Right. Yeah, but like I said, they need to start focusing on possibility of elder abuse, because they put Biden away in Camp David for many days, probably drugging him up, probably trying to tell him what he had to say and all that. And then by the time he hit the stage, he was completely lost because, the way he had been treated for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, so there you go. So a suggestion, thank you, Wally, for President Trump that he mandate a drug test if he's going to do this next debate. Although President Trump has agreed. It's supposed to be ABC that hosts this thing in September. Will it be George Stephanopoulos? I guess we'll find out. But it's coming up later this year. Well, it might. I have a feeling, though, they're going to replace this guy before that happens. We'll see if there's still any kind of presidential debate. I've got Sam in Alexandria on line 1. Sam, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vincent. And to all of the listeners, happy almost 4th of July. So one can imagine what was going on in the minds of people 248 years ago. Fabulous. You got to love it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this and all the spin going this way and that way. And now, all the governors from, I guess, 25 states or Democratic governors are coming to meet this evening.
Right.
And what I see happening is at the end of it, they will all parade out onto the South Lawn in one accord, raising hands and saying, he is absolutely as sharp as ever. That was a blip on the radar screen, and we are in full support. So that's kind of my prediction as to how this thing is going to roll. But, it's just like with any other political speculation.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to really call.
But you know that they'll be lying as they say that, Sam. And I'm not just talking about his mental fitness. That's the obvious lie. But the reason they're doing this is because they want to portray themselves as, oh, we're loyal, we're good Democrats. We support our party's leader. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, what do you think they're actually doing? What kind of maneuvering are these guys doing? As there's now a very open question about who the nominee should be for that party.
Oh, absolutely. And at that point there'll be some secret caucusing going on to see who the heir apparent will be coming into, the DNC. But, I find it really intriguing. And it's funny, I just got back into social media, and as I drive people crazy calling it Instagram, I saw a really hilarious meme the other day, and it was a video of some Midwest town, I don't know, somewhere, and there was a dumpster floating down the middle of the street, and somebody was talented enough to put a fire coming out of the dumpster. I think it was talking about, this is my life going into work, but I thought how appropriate for our, the current Democratic political situation they find themselves in.
Yeah, a dumpster fire floating down a flooded street. Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy for what's going on. Sam, thank you as always, sir. I appreciate the phone call.
You enjoy your Fourth.
Have a great Independence Day. I appreciate that. All right, let's see here. Roy is calling in from Nokesville, Virginia, with a thought on all of this on line 2. Roy, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, thanks for taking my call, man.
Yes, sir.
No, I just think everyone ought to take a deep breath, because I would bet my home with no mortgage. I would bet my home that Joe is going to step down, but it will be in September. That gives us no time when they bring in a ringer. That will give us no time to disparage that ringer or dispute them or vet them. It may be a celebrity. It may be Dwayne Johnson or whatever his name is.
The Rock?
The Rock. Or might be Jamie Foxx. I know this sounds ridiculous, but it also sounds ridiculous that last year we would think that a former president would be indicted on felonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't know who – we've forgotten who we're dealing with here. I mean, my mother used to tell us when we were children, never corner a rat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with people who have no boundaries.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. And I agree with you.
You got George Clooney and all of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson has said categorically, I'm not interested.
Didn't Dwayne Johnson say something recently that was anti-Biden, kind of pro-Trump? Didn't he? I thought he expressed some pro-Trump sentiment recently. He was on Fox News. He did an interview with their morning show. It might not be him, but the point you're making is excellent, Roy, which is like anything could happen, and before you know it, some name that's not even on our minds right now could be inserted, and they say, this is our guy, no time for vetting, it's time for the election.
And I think we can all just, pop some popcorn, watch a movie until September. Because Joe's doctor is going to come out and say, oh, well, no, he's fine. Everything's good. And it'll continue knowing that he's going to step down. These people, it's, like Chris Plant says, I hate to say these people. I don't hate to. These people are filth. Kamala's chartered jet could fly into a mountain. There's nothing that they will not do.
Well, who was that? Sorry, say that again. Whose chartered jet would fly into a mountain potentially?
Kamala.
Oh, Kamala.
Kamala's chartered jet could, suddenly run into fog and fly into a mountain. There's nothing they will not do.
Yeah, it's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be crazy. Is the point you're trying to make, Roy? Thank you. I appreciate the call. God forbid. I don't want to see anybody get whacked here. Basically exclude Hillary from your planning conversations if you're a lefty. don't involve her. Maybe decrease the chance that death is involved with any of this. Crazy. Let's see. Chris calling in from Frederick, line 6. Chris, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, nice to talk to you. I just want to point out that, and you do a great job. You're the guy that should have followed Rush. But
I follow Rush's time slot. I appreciate that. I start at 3 o'clock every day, and I'm perfectly happy being there.
Hey, between you, me, and the grand piano, you know what I'm saying. The basic civics of replacing Biden state very clearly he cannot be replaced. It is too late. The state deadlines have passed for replacing him. 2 states, Nevada and Wisconsin, require the death of a candidate for him to be replaced. Mm-hmm. Unless that happens, Biden can't be replaced in those 2 states. And they already had the convention talk, open convention. They already had a virtual convention because they needed to get him on, I forget if it was Ohio or Iowa. Right. So they did the convention virtually. So this convention is theater. It's not real. It's not.
So you just said, Chris, the virtual convention thing. Pause. Wait.
Belong to Biden.
Hold up. I just want to verify something because you just said that they've already held the virtual convention. Now, I gotta. One of the things I do every day is literally try and consume as much as I possibly can ahead of doing this program. Mike Howell from Heritage also said the same thing to me the other day. I was interviewing him. I think it was while I was hosting Dan Bongino's program on Monday, and I asked him, and he said, "Yeah, they did the virtual convention, and in the process, I've been looking for this, and I haven't seen what you're talking about, the virtual convention thing. I hadn't seen any news story to that effect. How are you? I feel bad that I'm in this situation, but how do you know that they did the virtual convention?"
Well, that was the only way that they could get him. He had to be nominated by the convention, so the delegates, in order to get on that state's ballot. And he was not going to be on it because the convention was happening after their state deadline.
Right, so I knew that.
Did a virtual one. And that was the answer. The only answer was they had to do it virtually.
No, that's right. But I don't know that it's so. Maybe I got to check with Mike Howell again. I don't know that it's actually occurred. You're talking about it as if it's already occurred. I don't know that it has. Let me read.
It did. That's how he got on this. That's how he got on the state ballot.
Okay, let me just quote for you. Let me quote for you. This is 2 days ago. Axios. I just pulled this up. Ohio may prevent in-person DNC chaos. They say last week's presidential debate debacle has sparked lots of talk of a wild broker Democratic National Convention, but not so fast. Thanks to the state of Ohio, the party's nominee will have to be finalized virtually weeks before the actual convention. Axios said this 2 days ago, and they're speaking in future tense about a virtual convention that's coming.
I understand that they're saying that, but it doesn't make sense because the reason they did the virtual was to get him on the ballot.
I know,
in
but
Ohio.
let me add the other element here.
And that was the only way for it to happen.
Ohio election law requires that they certify the presidential ticket by August 7th. They have over a month until that deadline date as we speak. In other words,
okay, so maybe the difference is the certification versus the actual deadline to file. So there could be discrepancy there, but even so. You still have Wisconsin and Nevada.
Yeah.
And you still have the delegates belong to Biden, right? He has to surrender them. They don't belong. They belong to the states. They don't belong to the Democratic National Party. They don't belong to the DNC. They can't. Those people, those organizations, cannot force the delegates to do anything.
The thing that
they have to.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. Finish that thought.
No. I'm just saying that they have to vote again, and the primaries are over, so they're going to have to vote. And if anybody thinks they're all going to vote for Kamala or whomever, replacement X, I don't see that happening.
One of the things that I keep hearing from the people who say that this is possible is that Kamala Harris, because she is the running mate, would be entitled to the resources of the campaign in a way that no other candidate would be. I don't know how much.
That's the resources, but I don't believe that qualifies her under the rules of who is the candidate nominee and who the delegate, because the delegates did not choose her.
Okay, I'll tell you what. This is what I'm going to do, just because I hate having a conversation where it's a bit confusing about what's going to happen in the end. We will, I promise, continue to clarify this and untangle this knot on the program. To make sure people have a clear understanding of how it all works.
And I would point you to an article that I read that helped, and it was in American Thinker, and I forget the exact title, but it was all of this talk of replacing Biden is nonsense or something like that.
Right.
It was sometime in the last week.
Okay.
If you read that, there is actually a link to a second article which details all of those details. And that might be helpful.
Awesome.
Jumping off point.
Love it.
Thank you.
And by the way, Axios reports, to add to this virtual convention talk, Bloomberg is reporting that the DNC is considering moving the virtual nomination to mid-July. So that based on that reporting, it hasn't occurred yet. It's supposed to happen in mid-July. So either way, some shenanigans afoot. That's the key. All right, Chris, thank you for the call. All right, CNN has a report today, and they say that, all these White House correspondents, how did they miss the story of Joe Biden's failing brain? Several White House reporters told CNN that the coverage of Biden's age and his mental stamina should have pushed harder. They cited several difficulties in doing so before the debate, from the obvious political motivations of sources who either want to protect Biden's image or project a certain image, to the blowback from pursuing such reports, especially from the White House and Democrats. Oh, you hear that? The White House correspondents, they're scared Democrats will be upset with them if they tell the truth. So they decided not to tell the truth. Really tells you everything. Biden's age was also a right-wing talking point for years, CNN says. Oh, well, if the right is talking about it, I guess you're not allowed to, again, tell the truth. Something the White House was quick to point out to reporters, which may have inadvertently turned off any serious investigation. No, it advertently did it. It wasn't inadvertently. The White House was going out of its way to say, hey, what are you, some kind of right-winger? Oh, no, not me. I have an LGBTQIA flag. I'm not a right-winger. Oh, no, it's fine. Okay, I'll just tell people that Biden is of sound mind. The right-wing media, that's what they're saying. Guess who was right, and not just politically? Coming up, President Trump's attorney will be with us, Will Scharf. We'll talk to him about all of the big developments in the life of our country. All right, 4:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Ed Morrissey from Hot Air will be with us in the next hour. So will Scott Perry, the congressman. We will chat with him about Joe Biden's limitations and what it means for our national security. That kind of seems like a big deal, doesn't it? And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A quick note for you, following up on the conversation we were having in the last half hour. Chris raised a lot of good points about what it would take to replace Joe Biden. And the subject of a virtual convention came up and whether or not the Democrats have already had it. Bloomberg has been reporting this week that virtual convention designed to put Joe Biden on the ballot in Ohio explicitly is set to take place, they say, on July 21st. So it has not yet taken place. Now, have they done some of the maneuvering virtually? Perhaps. Some of the voting in order to get this in place. But the actual vote to make sure to get him on the ballot in Ohio, assuming he is the nominee, is not going to take place until a little bit later this month, as of this very moment. But, who knows what's going to happen? All bets are off. You're watching as establishment Democrats are trying to eject Joe Biden as we speak. All right. Let's move to our next issue, which is that in addition to their machinations with Biden, the left has very much been trying to destroy Donald Trump. They do not want the voters to put that guy back in office, and they've been using lawfare this year as a means to try and stop him. Now, it's only redounded to his benefit. He's become more popular. His campaign has a lot more donations now. It's kind of blowing up in their face, but it's an awful abuse of our justice system. And here to discuss the latest on that issue is President Trump's attorney. He's a former federal prosecutor and a candidate for attorney general in Missouri as well. Will Scharf joins us again. Hello, Will. Good to have you back with us, sir.
Great to be with you, as always. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. The Supreme Court comes out with this huge decision Monday, the final day that they were in session, where they say that presidents of the United States are indeed entitled to immunity from criminal prosecution for any official acts they take as president. The left is apoplectic about this, but what they're not acknowledging is that this is a pretty clear denunciation of Joe Biden's abuse of power, isn't it, Will?
Absolutely. And if you actually read Chief Justice Roberts' opinion in legalese, he is basically excoriating the prosecution in the lower courts for the way that they have timed these prosecutions in a fundamentally political way. This mad rush to justice, this mad rush to drag President Trump into court Chief Justice Roberts clearly really doesn't like that. So that's definitely an aspect of this. I think at this point, all of these criminal cases across the board are basically collapsing under their own weight. Immunity obviously applies in D.C., where it presents, I believe, insurmountable challenges to the continuation of that prosecution. We've now gotten a stay of sentencing in New York on the basis of this immunity decision. Judge Merchan's order in that case indicates that he believes that sentencing may not actually occur, that we may be heading for a mistrial. This has implications for Florida. The Georgia case is going nowhere fast. Looking at the broad scope of this campaign of lawfare against President Trump, we are winning. We are going to win, and it has never been clearer than it's been this week that that is, in fact, the truth.
I do want to talk in more detail about how each of these cases are affected by the Supreme Court's decisions in the last week, to include this immunity decision. But let me start with Judge Merchan in New York. The fact that he's delaying sentencing until September, the rationale that he's giving, at least publicly, is, well, we need to take time to review this Supreme Court decision and whether or not it has any impact on this case. There's a part of me that thinks, though, that Merchan has been so out to get your client, President Trump, that part of what he's doing is perhaps delaying the sentencing until just before the election, just to cause some more trouble. Am I wrong in making that kind of assumption?
You know, Judge Merchan has really not given us many positive rulings. We were actually very excited by this one. There is this line at the end of his order that says that he's staying sentencing for quite a while, 2 months. And then he says essentially that sentencing may not even be necessary, which indicates that he at least believes that there may be grounds for a mistrial here. Okay. We, of course, believe that the grounds for a mistrial are very strong. There was a lot of evidence introduced at that trial that, based on the Supreme Court's opinion this week, cannot be used as evidence in that case against President Trump. That's pretty clear. That's just what's in the Supreme Court's opinion. Yeah. So we think we now have a very strong ground to toss that jury verdict out. And it seems as though Judge Merchan is at least acknowledging that as a real possibility.
There's Jonathan Turley, a smart attorney who we hear from regularly on Fox News and elsewhere. He's been saying that he's concerned that Merchan will still rule against President Trump here. He suggested that the prosecutors are going to be arguing that the things that now can't be included as evidence will be considered just harmless error, a harmless error defense for the prosecutors, and that Judge Merchan, given his past behavior, which is to constantly rule against President Trump, may actually look upon that argument favorably. What do you think of that idea?
I think we would look to appeal any negative judgment on this ground as quickly as possible. Appeals on immunity grounds are typically allowed on an interlocutory basis. You can take them immediately. New York appellate rules are a little complicated there. But if Judge Merchan tries to fly in defiance of the Supreme Court's opinion here, it's not going to go well for him. The Supreme Court spoke quite decisively on Monday. This was a broad 6-3 opinion that gave us really almost everything that we wanted. Yeah. And I just don't think that sort of thing is going to fly here.
Let's talk a little bit more about Jack Smith's cases now targeting President Trump. This is the special counsel at Biden's Justice Department. So the combination of the immunity decision that we got out of the court and the Fisher case last week about obstruction of an official proceeding in Congress, it seems that a lot of Jack Smith's charges against President Trump are basically incapable of moving forward. How should we view those?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That D.C. case, I wouldn't say it's in hospice care yet, but it's certainly on life support. Between the Fisher case, which directly impacts 2 of the 4 charges in that D.C. prosecution, and then this immunity decision, Jack Smith doesn't have much left to stand on if he wants to carry that case forward. We're obviously going to have to litigate the scope of immunity as it's applied to the facts in that case. Any negative decision there, we'd have a right to immediately appeal again. That case is going nowhere fast. At one point, it appeared to be politically threatening. We've always believed that it was baseless. Now it appears that no substantial action, certainly no trial, is going to occur before President Trump is inaugurated. And I would just say one final thing. This is a familiar situation for Jack Smith. He prosecuted Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. That case was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, and Jack Smith was reversed 8-0. Jack Smith has a long history of bringing these wildly overbroad, overly aggressive federal prosecutions and then getting smacked down by the higher courts, because what he does is not an even-handed application of the law to facts. It's political prosecution, pure and simple.
I'm pretty convinced that's why Merrick Garland and Joe Biden chose him, actually, because he has no scruples. He's willing to do things that almost no other attorney's willing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption.
So Jack Smith, there was a concurring opinion this week in the immunity case by the great Justice Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas suggested, about as explicitly as you can, that Jack Smith is not even eligible to be a special counsel, that this is an unlawful and unconstitutional position. And by extension, if the courts actually find that, all of these indictments, every single one that Jack Smith is purported to bring, needs to be thrown out. How important is Justice Thomas's opinion in your legal proceedings for President Trump? And will you use his opinion as a means to try and convince the courts that Jack Smith should be thrown out entirely and these indictments should be thrown out entirely?
Absolutely. We've actually already moved to dismiss the Florida indictment, the Florida documents case, on almost exactly the same basis that Clarence Thomas relied on in his concurrence. So we're looking forward to continuing to litigate that issue. We believe we have a good chance of success in front of Judge Cannon in Florida. And if so, that would be earth-shattering. That would obviously impact the Florida prosecution. It would have an immediate impact on the D.C. prosecution as well. And that's another issue that could end up back before the Supreme Court. You know, Justice Scalia wrote perhaps his most famous opinion, a dissent in Morrison v. Olson, over the constitutionality of the prior independent counsel structure. Justice Thomas's concurrence sounds a lot like Justice Scalia's opinion in Morrison. That's a seminal opinion. I think in time, Clarence Thomas's opinion in this case, this separate concurrence on the issue of the constitutionality of Jack Smith as special counsel, will be viewed in a similar way. That was hugely important, and we were very excited when we saw it.
So is that the kind of thing, because I don't understand the legal process here, is that the kind of thing you'd like staple to your filings? Like, hey, by the way, a Supreme Court justice just said this guy is totally invalidated. Do you submit that almost as an amicus brief?
So we've already briefed and actually argued this issue in front of Judge Cannon. You typically submit, it's a supplemental letter. You're informing the court of a new authority that bears on the issue that you've briefed. That's what we're doing in Florida. But certainly if Judge Cannon was wavering on this issue, if she was concerned that maybe she was being too aggressive, maybe she was considering the issue in too aggressive a manner, hopefully this would give her comfort to do the right thing. I think Jack Smith's appointment is blatantly unconstitutional. The funding mechanism being used to fund his office is unlawful. And hopefully we get some relief there.
That's such a huge deal. I'm fascinated to see where that goes next, and hopefully it's the right way. On the other cases here, so we talk about Jack Smith, also Georgia. You've got the Fani Willis fiasco continuing down there. It's, of course, taking a lot of time given all of her problems. To what extent does the immunity case really jeopardize her ability to prosecute Trump in any capacity?
Yeah, a lot of what she indicted Trump for are clearly immune acts. I mean, this guts her case. Now, look, that case is currently held up while we litigate the issue of Fani Willis's disqualification. If she's disqualified at this point, I think any fair prosecutor appointed to replace her would just dismiss the case. I don't think they have a case. But in the meantime, that case is on a slow boat to nowhere. And certainly this immunity decision takes any wind out of the sails that may have existed there. I mean, that case is as close to dead as you can be.
It's just remarkable how all of this has gone, and it's really unfortunate that it had to get here. Will Scharf, as always, really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Great to be with you, and we're going to keep on winning.
That's Will Scharf. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm never tired of that. All right, Will Scharf is a former federal prosecutor and an attorney for President Trump and a candidate for Attorney General in Missouri, representing the president very well here. And that's some good news all the way around as you get these decisions out of the court that you hear that Trump's attorneys are very much excited about, grateful for, and using immediately to advance their cause for their client. And that fact, that Clarence Thomas concurring opinion, it's not a long one. You should check it out. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, just go read Justice Thomas's opinion here. He very much, of course, supports the majority. That's why it's a concurring opinion where he's outright says, of course, the president's entitled to immunity for his official acts. This is like a totally common sense thing. But the other piece that he says wasn't addressed by the rest of the justices, but needs to be, is that the position that Jack Smith occupies is unconstitutional. There was no Senate confirmation for that position. Merrick Garland can't just make it up. You can't have a private citizen prosecuting another private citizen. It is completely unlawful and unconstitutional. And I know former Attorney General Ed Meese has been making this argument. Our friend, the great one, Mark Levin, has been talking about this. You have a Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas, saying it. You have President Trump's attorneys saying it. And you have a dishonest media who hasn't even given the argument the credence it deserves because it's legitimate, because it helps Trump, because it honors the Constitution. They've ignored it. They've pretended like, oh, this is just some fringe view. Not fringe at all. Totally legitimate. And now Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has added so much heft to it. I know they're trying to destroy that guy, but he loves America, and he's been doing a great job. And he seems to let it all run off his back. He doesn't care. They're like constantly attacking him for his summer vacations. Like, you get a load of this guy. He goes across the country in an RV. What? Are you serious right now? So now we're scanning people for their transportation decisions. How about the guys who tell us that we can't own internal combustion engines and then fly on private jets to climate conferences? When are you going to do the expose on that? Crickets. All right, more. All right, to the phones we go. Matt calling in from Rockville, line 5. Matt, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince.
Hey there.
I got two things. First is I haven't heard any of the, and not that I know many liberals, but there's been absolutely zero introspection from the ones that I do know, because his mental decline didn't happen overnight. And if they were surprised about seeing this, that means it was actively being covered up. And if it's actively being covered up by the media that you watch, when do you question the media that you watch?
Right.
When do you say, wait a minute, they've been hiding something this severe from me. What else are they willing to hide?
Totally.
And second, the great irony about who they're talking about replacing Biden, the great irony about all of this is the person is hiding Biden away. Robert F. Kennedy would be the greatest person to take on Trump, but they forced him out because they constantly said, no, Biden's our guy. He's perfectly fine. Well, when the S hits the fan, well, now what happens?
Yeah.
Well, RFK has already left the party. The delegates have already been pledged, and I don't think that there's any coming back from it. And I just think it's, the snake eating its own tail in the constant lies, and they've completely screwed themselves over.
And the reality, though, is I think you're right, Matt. I mean, it's like if you're looking at it as a good faith strategy, you're like, what are you doing? RFK's got some popularity. He could win as your nominee. They don't want that. They don't want that because they can't, because they don't feel that they can control him. He's too much against these various corporate interests. He's constantly talking about stopping them. They don't like that. This is not a guy who's just going to carry the company line. So he couldn't be the nominee anyway under normal circumstances. But you're right. It's like this is a party. They're self-destructing. They're imploding. But I also think that that's the point at which they get really dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And Biden wasn't going to pull anyone from Trump. Kamala's not going to pull anyone from Trump. Newsom isn't. But the person who was pulling from both people was RFK Jr. And so he could galvanize most, if not all, of the Biden base and even steal some from Trump, because when in a three-way race, both Biden and Trump's numbers dropped.
That's true.
But now if he's pushed off to the side and they're running with a corpse or, a person who made her political life on her back, how she got started with Willie Brown, it's just hysterical watching them eat their own. And as you talked about before, Trump staying silent and just watching the whole thing burn is the absolute best part.
Yeah, it's great, and he's doing a good job. He's getting good advice, and he's listening. And I know the left is like, he doesn't listen to anybody. He does, actually. You can see it right now. It's good instincts and a good campaign. By the way, you remember it was back in the 2020 primary. Julian Castro, the Democrat, was talking about Biden being incompetent.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be in for it.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
It wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret. They just tried to cover it up anyway. It's amazing. Congressman Scott Perry joins us next about the peril our country's in with a demented guy in charge.